I needed the money. That's what I keep telling myself when I wake up at 9 o'clock at night and get ready for another shift at Riverside Nuclear Plant. That's what I told myself when I accepted the job offer 3 months ago, and it's what I whisper under my breath when I'm walking through the dimly lit corridors at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying not to think about the sounds coming from inside the walls. The pay is incredible, double what I made at my last job, with full benefits and overtime that actually means something. My mom's care facility costs more every year. My student loans aren't getting any smaller, and my apartment in Portland wasn't gonna pay for itself. So when the recruiter called and said Riverside was hiring night shift technicians, I jumped at it. Even when she mentioned the location, middle of nowhere, Oregon, 2 hours from the nearest real town. I didn't hesitate. I should have asked why they were hiring. I should have asked why the pay was so good. The first week was normal, standard stuff. Frank Carver, my supervisor, is a stocky guy in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of face that's seen too much weather. He's been at Riverside for 20 years, which should have been my first clue. Nobody stays at the same nuclear plant for 20 years unless there's a reason. He walked me through the safety protocols, radiation badge procedures, emergency shutdown sequences, coolant system monitoring. The plant was built in the mid-70s, all concrete and steel, with that institutional beige color on every wall. It sits in a valley near the Cascade foothills, surrounded by pine trees and not much else. During the day, you can see mountains. At night, you can't see anything but darkness pressing against the windows. The reactor itself is fine. I want to stress that. All the equipment works perfectly. Output is consistent. Safety records are officially impeccable. This isn't about faulty machinery or corporate negligence or anything like that. I wish it were that simple. On my 5th night, Frank handed me a laminated sheet of paper. I was in the control room, about to start my rounds, when he pulled it from his desk drawer. "New safety protocols," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Corporate sent them down last month. You need to follow these exactly." I looked at the sheet. It was titled Supplementary Safety Procedures, version 7.0, and dated from 6 weeks earlier. The rules were: never enter cooling tower, 3 between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. If you hear knocking from inside the pipes, knock back twice and walk away. Do not acknowledge anyone wearing a yellow hard hat after midnight. If the emergency lights in Sector D flicker 3 times in succession, immediately proceed to the break room and wait for all clear. Never work alone in the sub-basement. Always bring a partner, even for quick checks. I read through them twice, waiting for Frank to crack a smile or tell me it was some kind of hazing ritual for new hires. He didn't. He just stood there, arms crossed, watching me. "These are serious?" I asked. "Completely. What happens if—" "Just follow them, Tyler. Exactly as written. Don't improvise. Don't test them. Don't think you know better." His voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. The people who ignore these rules don't work here anymore. I wanted to ask what he meant by that, but something about his expression stopped me. Instead, I nodded, folded the laminated sheet, and put it in my pocket. That night, During my 2 o'clock rounds, I was walking through Sector B when I heard it knocking. It came from inside one of the main coolant pipes, a massive steel tube that ran along the ceiling, maybe 3 feet in diameter. The sound was metallic, rhythmic. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause. My first thought was thermal expansion. Pipes in nuclear plants make all kinds of sounds as they heat and cool. But this was too regular, too deliberate. It sounded like someone was inside the pipe, knocking with a wrench. The rule sheet felt heavy in my pocket. My hands were sweating as I reached up and knocked twice on the pipe with my knuckles. The sound echoed dully. The knocking from inside stopped immediately. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, heart hammering, waiting. Nothing. Just the usual hum of machinery and the whisper of air through the ventilation system. I walked away quickly, not quite running, and didn't look back. When I got back to the control room, I told myself it was nothing, coincidence. The knocking would have stopped anyway. There was a rational explanation. There had to be. But I followed the rule, and nothing bad happened. The second week, I started to understand that the rules weren't suggestions. It was 1:30 on a Tuesday night, technically Wednesday morning, and I was in the control room with Brad Pierce, another night shift technician. Brad was maybe 35, quiet, kept to himself mostly. We were monitoring the reactor temperature readings, not talking much, when someone walked past the window. The control room is on the second floor, with windows overlooking one of the main corridors. I saw the figure clearly. Dark coveralls, work boots, and a yellow hard hat. Bright yellow, like a construction site hat. I felt my stomach drop. Brad had seen it too. I could tell by the way he went rigid, his eyes fixed on his monitor screen, refusing to look at the window. The figure walked past slowly, footsteps echoing in the corridor. I kept my eyes down, hands on my keyboard, trying to look busy. Every instinct screamed at me to look up, to see who it was, to call out and ask what they were doing in this section. I didn't. The footsteps faded. Brad and I sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Brad spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "You saw it?" "Yeah." "Good." I thought I was losing my mind. We didn't talk about it again that night, but I noticed Brad's hands shaking when he poured his coffee. The next evening, before my shift started, I found Frank in his office. "The yellow hard hat," I said, closing the door behind me. "What is it?" Frank looked up from his paperwork. His face went pale. "You didn't acknowledge it, did you?" "No." I followed the rule. He relaxed slightly, setting down his pen. "Good. That's good. But what?" "We don't have yellow hard hats at this facility, Tyler. We've never had yellow hard hats. We use white for general workers and red for supervisors. That's it. That's always been it." "So who?" "I don't know." Frank rubbed his face tiredly. "I've seen it maybe a dozen times in 20 years. Different people have seen it. Always after midnight. Always wearing yellow. And anyone who's tried to approach it or talk to it." He trailed off. "What happened to them?" Frank was quiet for a long moment. "There was a guy, maybe 5 years back, new hire, like you. He saw the yellow hard hat and thought it was a contractor who got lost or something. Called out to them, followed them down the corridor. And He came back to the control room. Seemed fine. Finished his shift, went home. 3 days later, he didn't show up for work. Security found his car in the parking lot, keys in the ignition, engine running. Never found him. Police searched for weeks. Nothing. The room felt colder. Just follow the rules, Frank said quietly. Please. The knocking got worse. By week 3, I was hearing it almost every night. Not just in Sector B anymore, all over the facility. Sometimes in the cooling system, sometimes in the structural supports, sometimes in pipes that shouldn't make any sound at all. It was never the same location twice, but it was always the same pattern. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause, and I always knocked back twice, exactly as instructed. But one night, around 2:30, the knocking became frantic. I was in one of the turbine halls, checking pressure gauges, when it started. Not rhythmic this time, just rapid, desperate hammering from inside a pipe 10 feet above my head. Bang, 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 bang. I knocked back twice with trembling hands. The hammering didn't stop. It continued, even louder, more urgent. The pipe was shaking slightly. I knocked again, harder this time, but nothing changed. The sound followed me as I walked toward the exit, moving along the pipe system like something was tracking my position. I practically ran back to the control room and locked the door behind me. The knocking continued outside for 20 minutes. I could hear it through the walls, through the floor, through the ceiling. It surrounded the control room, coming from every direction. Then, at exactly 3 o'clock, it stopped. Complete silence. I sat there until my hands stopped shaking, then radioed Frank. He told me to file an incident report and go home early. I didn't argue. It was during week 4 that I met Emma Frost. She worked day shift, an engineer who'd been at Riverside for 5 years. I'd seen her during shift changes, but never really talked to her. She was maybe 40, with short, dark hair and the kind of tired eyes that suggested she'd seen things she didn't want to remember. We ended up in the parking lot at the same time, her arriving as I was leaving. She looked at me, really looked at me, and something in her expression made me stop. "You're the new night tech," she said. It wasn't a question. "Tyler." "Emma." She glanced back at the facility, its lights bright against the pre-dawn darkness. "You've seen things." Again, not a question. "Yeah." She nodded slowly. "And you're following the rules?" "Exactly." "Good. That's the only reason you're still here." She paused, seeming to consider something. "Can I give you some advice?" "Please." "The reactor is fine. All the technical stuff, radiation containment, coolant systems, power output, it's all perfect. This plant could run for another 50 years without any problems." She looked directly at me. "But something is wrong with this place. Not the reactor, the location. They built this facility on top of something, and I don't think they realized what it was until it was too late." "What do you mean, something?" "I don't know exactly. Nobody does. Or if they do, they're not talking. But every few years, the rules get updated. We're on version 7 now. Each new version means someone didn't make it." My mouth was dry. "How many versions have you seen?" 3. I started on version 4. She pulled out her keys. "My advice? Don't try to understand it. Don't try to investigate. Just follow the rules perfectly and you'll be fine. The moment you think you're smart enough to bend them or figure out what's really happening, that's when it gets you. She started toward her car, then turned back. And Tyler? Don't ever go into Cooling Tower 3 during restricted hours. I mean it, whatever you do. Week 5 brought the Sector D incident. I was checking pressure valves with Brad around 2:45. Sector D is one of the older sections with exposed concrete walls and lighting that's never quite bright enough. We were working in silence. Brad and I had both learned that talking too much at night felt wrong somehow. When the emergency lights started flickering, they're mounted on the walls every 20 feet, red lights that only activate during emergencies or power failures. Under normal circumstances, they stay dark. One flicker. I looked up. 2 flickers. Brad's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. 3 flickers. We ran. The break room was 2 corridors and 1 stairwell away. We didn't speak, didn't look back, just ran like our lives depended on it. My badge slapped against my chest, boots hammering on concrete, Brad's breathing harsh beside me. We burst into the break room and slammed the door. Brad locked it. We stood there, chests heaving, staring at each other. You counted 3? I managed. 3. Brad confirmed. We waited. The break room is windowless, with a table, some chairs, a coffee maker, and a refrigerator that hums too loudly. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Brad sat down heavily. I paced. 15 minutes passed. 20. 30. At 45 minutes, Frank's voice crackled over my radio. Tyler, Brad, you can come out. All clear. Frank's voice was shaking. We walked back slowly. When we reached Sector D, there was yellow caution tape across the entrance. Don't go back there tonight, Frank said when we found him. I'll file the incident report. You two go. Go monitor the reactor or something. Stay in the control room. Frank, what was... Brad started. Don't ask. Frank's face was grey. Just don't. But Brad pulled me aside later, in the control room, and whispered, I saw it. Before I ran, just for a second, down at the end of the hallway. The yellow hard hat? No, worse. It wasn't wearing anything that looked right. The shape was wrong, like... He struggled for words. Like someone had described what a person looks like, but had never actually seen one, and it was watching us. Brad called in sick for the next 3 shifts. I didn't blame him. The sub-basement incident happened during week 6. It was 2:30, and I was doing standard rounds when the emergency coolant alarm went off for sub-basement level. Just a minor alert, probably a sensor issue, but it needed to be checked immediately. I radioed for Brad. No response. Called the turbine hall. Frank answered. They were dealing with a minor issue there, something about a pressure gauge acting up. Frank, I need someone for the sub-basement. Coolant alarm. Static. Then, who's available? Nobody. Everyone's busy. Long pause. I could almost hear him thinking. Can it wait 30 minutes? I checked the readings. Not really. If it's actually failing. Shit. Another pause. Okay. Get in and out. 5 minutes maximum. Do not stop for anything. You hear me, Tyler? Anything. Got it. I'm serious. 5 minutes. The sub-basement is accessed through a stairwell in Sector C. It's the oldest part of the facility, built directly into bedrock. The walls down there are rough concrete, always damp, always cold. The lighting is sparse, just bare bulbs every 15 feet. I descended slowly, toolkit in hand, counting steps. 32 steps down. The air got colder with each step, and I could smell that underground smell, wet stone and old metal. The coolant valve was about 50 feet from the stairs. Easy fix if it was just a sensor problem. I could see it from the bottom step, a red wheel valve on a thick pipe. I walked toward it, boots echoing on concrete. That's when I heard the breathing. Not my breathing. Something behind me. Slow, wet breaths that didn't sound quite right. Like air moving through something that wasn't quite a throat. Frank's words echoed in my head. Do not stop for anything. I reached the valve, hands shaking. Just a loose sensor, thank God. I tightened it, checked the gauge. Green, fixed. The breathing was closer now, right behind me. And footsteps, multiple footsteps with a wrong rhythm. Not 2 feet, too many. And they didn't sound like boots on concrete, more like something heavy dragging across stone. I walked back toward the stairs. Not running. Running might trigger it, some instinct told me. Just walking steadily, toolkit gripping in sweaty hands. The presence behind me moved closer. I could feel cold air on the back of my neck. Could smell something like ozone and rotting meat. The stairs were 20 feet away, 10 feet, 5. I reached for the door at the top. It wouldn't open. I pulled harder, locked. From the outside somehow, even though it's not supposed to lock at all. Behind me, on the stairs, something was climbing. I couldn't see it, didn't dare turn around, but I could hear it. The wrong footsteps, the wet breathing, and now a sound like metal scraping concrete. I pounded on the door. Frank? Frank. The thing was halfway up the stairs. The door flew open. Frank was there, face white, and he yanked me through with surprising strength, slammed the door behind me. We stood in the corridor, both breathing hard. I said 5 minutes, Frank said. You were down there for 12. I checked my watch, 2:55. I'd gone down at 2:40. Frank, I was only down there for 5 minutes. I went straight to the valve, fixed it, came straight back. He grabbed my wrist and showed me my watch. It's been 12 minutes, Tyler. We stared at each other. My watch definitely said 2:55. I definitely checked the time when I started down. 2:43, maybe 2:44 at the latest, unless my watch was wrong. Or the time in the sub-basement moved differently, or I'd lost 7 minutes somewhere between the valve and the stairs. Frank's office door was locked. He pulled me inside and locked it again behind us. Sit down, he said. I sat. My hands were still shaking. Frank poured himself coffee from a pot that looked hours old and drank it standing up, staring at the wall. Finally, he spoke. I'm telling you this because you survived. Most people don't make it past their first month here. Frank dash. Just listen. He sat down heavily behind his desk. In 1978, during the construction of this plant, they were excavating the foundation. Standard procedure. But about 40 feet down, they broke through into a cavity. Natural cave system, they thought. sent a team down to survey it, make sure it was stable. He paused, drinking more coffee. The team came back 4 hours later. All 6 of them. They filed their reports, said the cavity was stable, recommended they just seal it up and continue building. So that's what they did. Poured concrete, reinforced it, built the plant right on top. So what's the problem? Frank's eyes met mine. 3 days after they came back from the cavity, all 6 of those workers vanished. Just gone. Different times, different places. One disappeared from a restaurant bathroom. Another was walking to his car after shift and never arrived. One vanished from his own bedroom while his wife was in the kitchen. The room felt very cold. Corporate knew something was wrong. They brought in investigators, researchers, people with security clearances I've never even heard of. Whatever they found, they decided to seal it up tighter and finish construction anyway. The plant was 90% complete. They'd already spent millions. Stopping would have been a disaster. But sealing it didn't work. No, whatever is down there, in that cavity or in whatever the cavity opened into, it bleeds through. It's always been here, in this plant, and we can't get rid of it. So instead, we manage it. We learn the rules. We follow them. And most of the time, it works. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph, yellowed with age. He slid it across the desk. The photo showed 6 men in work clothes standing near an excavation site, construction equipment in the background. Dated July 12th, 1978. But there was something in the background, partially obscured by shadows. A 7th figure, wearing a yellow hard hat, standing at an angle that was anatomically impossible. The body was twisted wrong, bent in places that didn't have joints. This was taken 3 days before they sealed the cavity. Frank said quietly. My mouth was dry. So the yellow hard hat has been here since before we knew there was a problem. And if it was there then, when the cavity was still open. He took the photo back. Whatever these rules are protecting us from, it's been here the whole time. We just gave it a nuclear plant to live in. I should have quit. I know that. Any sane person would have walked out right then and submitted their resignation by email from the safety of their apartment. But I didn't. I needed the money. Mum's care facility had just raised their rates again. My student loans were coming out of deferment, and my rent was due. Besides, where else could I make this kind of money? And Frank was still here after 20 years. Emma after 5. Brad had come back after his sick days. The rules worked, didn't they? Follow them exactly. Survive. It was that simple. Except it wasn't. Because by week 7, I'd learned there were unwritten rules too. Things nobody told you, but everyone somehow knew. Don't look directly at shadows that move independently of their sources. If you smell ozone when there's no electrical work being done, go outside for 15 minutes. The coffee in the break room tastes wrong on bad nights, metallic, too bitter. Don't drink it. If your radio picks up voices that aren't on any channel, turn it off immediately. Never count the people you see during your shift. The number won't be right. I learned these through observation, through careful watching of how Frank and the other veterans moved through the facility. They had a way of not quite looking at certain corners, of walking quickly past certain corridors without seeming to rush. Week 8 brought new hires. 2 of them, Kevin Wright and Thomas Chen, both young guys fresh out of technical school, eager and competent. Frank gave them the orientation, the safety briefing, and finally the laminated rule sheet. I watched from the doorway as Kevin read through it. He laughed. "These are jokes, right? Some kind of initiation thing?" Frank's expression didn't change. "No, follow them exactly. Come on, don't enter cooling tower 3 between certain hours, knock backup pipes. This is like a creepypasta." Thomas elbowed him. "Dude, shut up." But Kevin was still grinning. "What, are you all in on it? Is there a bet about how long the new guys believe this stuff?" Frank stood up slowly. He's not a tall man, but something about the movement made Kevin stop smiling. "These rules are the only reason people survive working here. They were written in blood, some literally. You can think they're funny, you can think I'm hazing you, but when you hear knocking from inside the pipes, you will knock back twice and walk away. When you see someone in a yellow hard hat after midnight, you will not acknowledge them. Are we clear?" Kevin and Thomas both nodded, suddenly serious. I wanted to pull them aside, to tell them everything Frank had told me, to make them understand. But I didn't. Everyone has to learn on their own. Everyone has to have that first moment when they realize the rules aren't suggestions. I just hoped they'd both survive their first month. Week 9, and Frank handed out new laminate sheets during the shift briefing. Version 7.1, he announced. Everyone needs to turn in their old sheets and memorize the updated rules. There were 5 of us in the room. Me, Brad, Thomas, Kevin, and an older technician named Pete, who worked the same schedule but different sections. We all leaned forward to read. The new rule was listed at the bottom. If you see yourself working in any area you are not currently in, do not approach. Report to supervisor immediately and leave the facility. The room was silent. "What happened?" I asked quietly. Frank folded his arms. "Brad saw himself last week, working in cooling tower 3, during restricted hours." Everyone turned to look at Brad. He was staring at the table, jaw tight. "I followed protocol," Brad said, radioed Frank immediately, left the facility. "I did everything right." "And you did," Frank assured him. "You're alive because you followed the rule." "But he quit." Emma had told me. Brad quit. I hadn't believed her until now. Brad stood up. "This was my last shift. I'm out. I can't do this anymore." I saw myself, my own face, working in that tower at 2 o'clock, and the thing that looked like me turned and smiled at me. Its smile was too wide. He left the room without another word. We sat in silence. Kevin raised his hand slightly, like he was in school. "What if we see this? What if we see ourselves?" "Report and leave," Frank said. "Immediately. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to interact. Just get out." Has anyone ever approached their... Thomas struggled for the word. "Their double?" Frank's face was grim. "Once." Guy thought he was hallucinating from stress, walked right up to it and tried to touch it, thinking it would disappear. It grabbed him, pulled him into cooling tower 3. We found his badge 3 days later, just sitting on the ground outside the tower entrance. Never found him. I thought about that for the rest of the shift, about seeing myself somewhere I wasn't, about what it would mean if that thing wore my face. Week 10 was quiet, which should have been a relief, but somehow wasn't. Thomas turned out to be good at following rules. He was careful, methodical, didn't ask too many questions. Kevin was more unpredictable. I'd catch him staring at the yellow caution tape across Cooling Tower 3, or lingering too long in corridors he should have moved through quickly. One night, around 3:15, I was doing my rounds when I smelled it. Ozone, strong and sharp, like the air after lightning strikes. There was no electrical work scheduled, no reason for that smell. I turned and walked straight outside, pushing through the emergency exit. The alarm would sound, but I didn't care. Frank would understand. I stood in the parking lot for 15 minutes, breathing cold Oregon air, watching the facility's lights through the darkness. My shift had 90 minutes left. When I went back inside, the smell was gone. Frank found me in the control room. "You triggered the alarm." Smelled ozone in Sector E. No electrical work. He nodded. "Good. That's good. You're learning the unwritten rules." Are there more? Things I should know? Frank considered this. Probably. I've been here 20 years, and I still learn new ones. The facility teaches you, if you pay attention, if you survive long enough to learn. That's not reassuring. This job isn't supposed to be reassuring, Tyler. It's supposed to pay well. Fair point. The knocking followed me home that night. I was driving back to my apartment, windows down, trying to stay awake. The road from Riverside winds through forest for about 20 miles before hitting anything resembling civilization. It was 5:30, still dark. My headlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. That's when I heard it. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Coming from inside my dashboard. I nearly swerved off the road. Pulled over instead, hands shaking on the wheel. The knocking continued, mechanical and rhythmic, from somewhere behind the air vents. I knocked twice on the dashboard with my knuckles. The knocking stopped. I sat there for 5 minutes, engine idling, heart pounding. Eventually, drove the rest of the way home and didn't sleep until noon. The next shift, I told Frank. He went very pale. It's never followed anyone home before. What does that mean? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe. He rubbed his face. Just keep following the rules. At work and anywhere else, if you hear it again, knock back twice. Even at home. Especially at home. I didn't hear it again, but I started noticing other things. Shadows in my apartment that didn't match any objects. The taste of ozone in my tap water sometimes. Once, I saw someone wearing a yellow hard hat walking past my building at 2 o'clock. I didn't acknowledge it. The rules were spreading, or maybe they'd always applied everywhere, and I was only now realizing it. Week 12 brought the incident with Kevin. I should have seen it coming. He'd been asking too many questions, spending too much time thinking about the rules instead of just following them. That kind of curiosity is dangerous here. It was a Tuesday night, around 1:45. Kevin and I were assigned to different sections, but I heard it over the radio. "Frank, this is Kevin. I'm near Cooling Tower 3. Static. Then Frank's voice tense. Kevin, what are you doing in that area? Just checking something. The door to the tower is open. My blood went cold. I was in Sector B, too far away to do anything but listen. Kevin, walk away from that tower right now. That's an order. But it's open, Frank. The door shouldn't be open during restricted hours, right? Someone needs to close it. Kevin, walk away now. I'm just going to look inside. Make sure everything's... Kevin, static for 10 seconds. Nothing but static. Then Kevin's voice came back, but different, flat, wrong. Everything's fine in here, Frank. You can close the door now. Kevin, are you inside the tower? Yes, I'm inside. It's interesting in here. Frank's breathing was audible over the radio. Kevin, I need you to come out. Right now. I don't think I can do that, Frank. I'm busy. Kevin, dash. There's someone here who looks like me. He says I should stay. The radio went dead. Frank called emergency procedures. We searched the tower at 4:05 after the restricted hours ended. Found Kevin's radio on the ground, his badge, his flashlight, one of his boots. No Kevin. We searched for 3 days. Police came, asked questions, searched the entire facility and surrounding woods. Nothing. On the 4th day, Pete saw someone working in Cooling Tower 3 at 2:30. Someone who looked exactly like Kevin. They updated the rules to version 7.2. Added rule. Cooling Tower 3 door will be locked during restricted hours. If you find it unlocked, do not close it yourself. Report to supervisor immediately and stay away from the area. Thomas quit the next week. Said he had a job offer closer to home. Nobody blamed him. I stayed. God help me, I stayed. That was a month ago. I'm still here, still working nights, still following the rules. I've gotten good at it. I know which corridors to avoid at certain times. I know the sound of normal machinery versus the sound that means something is wrong in a way that has nothing to do with mechanical failure. I know how to walk past windows without looking at reflections. I know when the coffee tastes wrong. New hires come every few weeks. Some last a month, some don't. Yesterday, they hired a woman named Rachel. She seems smart, careful. Frank gave her the rule sheet. We're on version 7.3 now. After Pete saw something in the sub-basement that required a new rule about never following sounds that seem like they're coming from your own voice. Rachel read through the rules and didn't laugh. Good sign. Tonight, I'm doing my usual rounds. It's 2:47. I've checked Sector B, avoiding the corner where shadows sometimes move wrong. I've walked past the break room without stopping for coffee because it smells metallic tonight. In the distance, I hear knocking. 3 knocks, pause. 3 knocks. I stop, knock twice on the nearest pipe, and keep walking. My radio crackles. Tyler, this is Frank. Status? Normal night, Frank. Everything's normal. Good. Remember. I know. Follow the rules. I sign off and continue my rounds, boots echoing on concrete. Somewhere deep below, I can feel it. The thing in the cavity, the thing that's been here since before the plant was built. It's always there, pressing up against reality like water against a dam. But the dam holds. as long as we follow the rules. I pass a window and carefully don't look at the reflection, not because I see anything wrong, just because it's better not to check. Some things are safer unknown. 90 minutes left in my shift. Then I'll drive home, sleep through the afternoon, and come back tonight to do it all again. Because I need the money. Because the rules work. Because I've learned that sometimes survival isn't about understanding what you're surviving. It's just about following the instructions, no matter how strange they seem. In Sector D, I hear footsteps behind me. I don't turn around. The footsteps have the wrong rhythm. Too many feet, wrong spacing. I keep walking, steady pace, not running. Running triggers things. The footsteps follow me for 2 corridors, then stop. I reach the control room and check the monitors. All systems green. Reactor stable. Power output perfect. This plant could run for another 50 years without any problems. As long as we follow the rules. As long as we don't ask too many questions. As long as we remember that the rules aren't protecting us from the plant. They're teaching us to coexist with what lives beneath it. I settle into my chair and pour coffee that tastes normal tonight. Through the window, I can see the rest of the facility stretching out into darkness. Somewhere out there, in one of those corridors or towers or sub-basements, something is moving. Something that's been here since 1978, or maybe longer. But I'm in the control room, behind locked doors, following every rule perfectly. And that's enough. It has to be enough. Because tomorrow night, I'll be back. And the night after that. And the night after that. The job pays too well to quit. And I've gotten very, very good at following rules.